Well, g'day, it's great to have your company. Well, it's just 2 more sleeps until the US presidential election. Arguably Australia's most enthusiastic Trump supporter, Bernie Finn, will join me with his prediction and insights as to why this is probably the most consequential election this century. The women's advocacy group Collective Shout has just released a report on the harms of pornography and how boys' consumption of it is affecting teachers in the classroom. Something has to be done about this. And Kirralie Smith joins me with the latest research that shows young women who take drugs to change their gender are entering menopause in their early 20s. I kid you not. But first, it's now official. Renewables are not cheaper. Despite years of promises from governments that the transition to renewables would bring power bills down, the Australian Energy Market Operator, AEMO, their chief executive, Daniel Westerman, has finally admitted he cannot guarantee lower energy costs. Now, during a recent Senate inquiry where he was asked directly if the transition would deliver cheaper electricity, Westerman stated, "I can't guarantee that, no," end quote. Now, this frank admission exposes the reality that despite all the rhetoric, the renewable energy path is not the road to affordable energy Australian households have been promised. Both Labor and the coalition governments have pushed net zero policies, with the coalition, when it was in power, also backing the rollout and subsidy of windmills and solar panels. Yet these technologies have consistently failed to provide reliable or cheap electricity. The coalition may now be turning to nuclear as an alternative, but it's important to remember that their support for renewables and net zero during their time in government, a whole 9 years, contributed to the higher costs Australians are now facing. Now, Family First has long sounded the alarm on net zero, not only because of concerns about affordability, but also due to the unreliability of renewables. In his address to the Family First National Conference in September, Party Chairman Tom Kenyon pointed out the inherent problems with relying on wind and solar. They simply don't work when the wind isn't blowing or the sun isn't shining. He's not the only one to have pointed that out, of course. This unreliability forces the need for expensive backup options like batteries and gas, adding to the already high cost of building renewable infrastructure. Now, the Albanese government's energy plan, endorsed by AEMO, promises that renewables combined with batteries and gas are the lowest cost pathway to replace coal. However, even Westerman has admitted this plan does not guarantee cheaper bills for consumers. Here's the Queensland LNP Senator Matt Canavan questioning Westerman in the Senate very recently.
But you're saying you cannot guarantee that the current government policy settings which you model will deliver lower power prices?
I can't guarantee that, no. And what I would say is we try to be quite clear about the communication of our message, which is that the integrated system plan, which considers these things, generation storage and major transmission upgrades, is the lowest cost pathway. It doesn't refer to whether it's cheaper or more expensive for that wholesale component, and it explicitly doesn't consider other parts of the consumer energy bill.
And they're the key words there. It doesn't consider other parts of the consumer energy bill. All the new electricity wires, the poles that have to be set out to dispersed parts of Australia, tens of thousands of kilometres, all end up on your electricity bill. We're being lied to by Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese and everyone else, the Teals, etc., who say that renewables are the cheapest form of electricity. The bell has been... that they've now belled the cat on this. It's a big fat lie. Now, Matt Canavan has been a voice in the wilderness as his party put Scott Morrison on the plane to Glasgow back in 2021 to sign Australia up to this unachievable globalist net zero goal. Family First has been consistent in its opposition to net zero policies, recognising early on the financial and reliability risks. Now that these risks are becoming evident, it's time for serious rethinking of Australia's energy future. The fantasy of cheap renewables has been shattered, and it's Australian households who are paying the price.